Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today, my good friend Ian, he is the CEO at Quantum EVM. Before we get too deep into Quantum EVM, give us a little bit about your background. What brought you to quantum computing and Web3?
I was first interested in digital currency back in 2002 when I tried to design RSA as a method of exchanging individual bills, like a $10 piece of RSA and a $100 piece of RSA. But I couldn't solve double spend to my satisfaction. So back then, I tried to attack my own idea and came up with double spend attacks and came up with, like what kind of forgery would exist? What about factoring the RSA? What about attacking it with any known technique? Because I was actually having to abuse the way that RSA functioned. I read a lot about it and I did it, by hand. And, you really understand the algorithm when you do the calculations by hand. So that led me to quantum computing. And I've just always had it on my radar ever since 2002 when it was purely theoretical. And I studied physics before that, so it wasn't covered in my physics classes at all. But last year, the algorithms got very good. And so now it's a more exigent and present risk.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about Quantum EVM. Like what's the mission there? What are you guys trying to accomplish?
Save Web3. If we don't build this, Web3 is essentially dead. In 2026 or 2027, quantum computers will be able to solve the cryptography of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and there's the idea of modifying the chains in order to protect against quantum computers, but that may take 2 to 5 years. So there are some proposals, and most of the proposals are based around after a quantum attack, we will do X, and that's the policy at Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin is basically considering, we're going to be safe because we have UTXO, and that means that our addresses are going to change all of the time. They may have a few months, but they won't have years, because the systems are currently, instead of building these gigantic supercomputers or supercomputers, they have this new algorithm that allows you to use a lot of smaller machines we can actually build and use them together. And all you need to do to increase performance is just keep building more of the same thing. So they've done the hardware calculations to figure out 10 minutes, which is in UTXO time, within a single block of being mined on Bitcoin. And that means that we don't have months or years, so we'll be able to keep making the same machines and attack it very quickly.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about quantum computing and why this poses kind of an existential risk to Web3, because I don't think it will become immediately apparent to the audience. Talk to us a little bit about what quantum computing is, and then what it unlocks, and then we'll go into the risks.
So I'll try to give a couple layman examples first. If you imagine a magic 8-ball, you're able to just kind of load in a question, you ask it something, you shake it, and then an answer pops out. This is much different than the way that silicon computing works, where you have addition and comparison. We just do those really, really fast, and we do it a lot of times in parallel. Like your cell phones have like 3 to 10,000 processors in them, all just doing addition and comparison. A quantum computer uses physics, and it's kind of like asking that magic 8-ball. You have to load in the question. The question is a math problem, and then it will solve that math problem. And the answer just gets spit out probably. So the language of the universe is being tapped to do the calculation as opposed to just doing addition really, really, really fast. This is able to do something called Shor's algorithm, which is a way of you can factor large numbers with it, and you can also figure out the precise base for an exponent and a very, very large number. And that's used to also solve discrete logs are a way of solving elliptic curves. So because it's this massive finite field, and you need to have this the number of times you looped a single prime number over and over and over between 0 and 2 to the 256 times, you're looking for resonance with that solution. And Shor's algorithm was able to find resonance with the answer, perform the discrete log, and then the private key pops out. So the question you're asking is the public key. Computation is Shor's algorithm, and then the answer is someone's private key. And then they're able to simply spend the money as if it was their own. In the case of Bitcoin, they'll just send another transaction with a higher fee, front run you, and then redirect your money to their wallet. So now they have your money to spend, and your Bitcoin is now theirs. The original, paper, how to compute a 256-bit elliptical curve with only 50 million Toffoli gates, by Daniel Litinsky, targeted 10 minutes, but on the second page of the paper, he scales it down to 8.3 seconds. And the scary part about this is that they can ask more than one question at a time. And then all of the answers to a quantum computer pop out together. They just have to go into their own slots. So what you're really looking at is they can just mine, and someone looks at the mempool for Bitcoin, says, oh, well, here's all the transactions going to be mined in the next block. I'll just crack all of them. And then they just do the discrete logs. They get the private keys to all of the transactions, and then they redirect all of the transactions to their wallet instead. And that can be done very, very fast.
And when you say very fast, how fast are we talking?
Well, if you were to count from 0 to 2 to the 256, you wouldn't be able to count before the sun would die out, assuming that you used all of the energy to count. Now, a discrete log on a classical system is still, you're looking at a very, very long time, as in billions of years. And it would have to be massive, just larger than all of the computers combined, probably. There's some estimates on this, but it's just mathematical notation. To do the same thing with a quantum computer, you need a few, like a year or two of production on PsiQuantum's device, or a few weeks of production if Intel has a good yield, or maybe a few weeks or months of production using Oxford Ionic system. And let's say that it takes 10 minutes for the first attack. Litinsky's paper includes up to 160 days in his calculations. Like, with this frequency rate, you're looking at 160 days versus billions of years, right? And then by simply adding more of the same machine, he's able to solve within, now minutes, a minute, 53 seconds is one of his targets. And then just by tripling the number of computers, going from 53 seconds down to 8.3 seconds. So it's speeding up faster than the amount of increase in hardware. So for triple the hardware, you're getting a little over a 6x performance increase, 7x performance increase.
Wow, sorry. So let's talk
scary.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the solution so that we don't lose all of our coins, or in my case, the random JPEGs I have in my wallet.
All the meme coins and the crypto kitties and stuff.
Yeah.
So the solutions come in two varieties. The first one is mitigations, and the second one is migrations. So you can mitigate by putting to a secure wallet, or by transferring all of your assets to a hash that has never done a transaction. So it's a wallet address with no transactions in the wallet. That means that the public key is never exposed, and they would have to find a hash collision to spend the money, which quantum computers can do, but not that much better than silicon. When you look at Daniel Bernstein's algorithms, he's saying that classical is actually a little bit better if you want to find a duplicate hash. So quantum computers don't have a significant advantage in attacking the hash at all. And so the wallet address is safe, but if it's done in transaction, it's not safe. There's a series of different cryptographic techniques that are combined to do something similar to blockchain using only hashes as the signatures. So the only way that there's no public key to attack, you're just looking at a very large series of hashes. And like Lamport wallets, one of my advisor from Poly Group made a Lamport wallet for Ethereum, but the signatures are 307 times larger than a normal transaction. And that's just to sign it. That's no payload. When you look at Solana, they don't have enough space to hold that. So there's no real migration strategy for them or mitigation strategy for them. When you look at Bitcoin, there was a series of proposed alternate cryptography systems, but all of these things are massive. And these are public-private key systems that are quantum safe. And this is what's being used by Apple, Google, and Signal right now. They're all three early adopters in post-quantum cryptography. These are things like lattices, which is a matrix of matrices, and it's like this massive grid of numbers. And instead of being able to calculate discrete log, they have a much harder math problem to try to find your private key. So this allows public-private keys to still be used. And that post-quantum cryptography is unfortunately very, very inefficient. There's been improvements in the efficiency of computing it with silicon. You're just using your laptop and your phone right now to use post-quantum cryptography if you're using Signal and Chrome and Apple. However, the real longevity here is going to come from migrating to a new chain, and that's where quantum EVM comes in. We're building a post-quantum cryptography chain, which unfortunately means it's slower, and we're adding smart contracts to it. And so we're going to have a series of different algorithms that we support, not just one or two, but we're trying to support about 7 to 10, depending on the security. A lot of people have seen the recent news regarding NIST post-quantum recommendations delayed. It was supposed to come out last year, and it was supposed to come out in July. Now it's been announced in August, and then they're going to announce another candidate next year, maybe, and that's Falcon. The reason that Falcon caused delays, because we're not sure it's secure. They've attacked it for years. They found a large number of attacks. It's mostly robust, but it depends upon the randomness of the number that it's fed in order to determine if it's safe. Now, if you look at RSA, it doesn't matter what number you use as the exponent. There was a lot of security analysis that went into this. And now just everybody uses the exponent 3 because it doesn't add a lot of security to make the exponent 7 or a random number or 73 or just there are. It's a secure system no matter what implementation you use, whereas Falcon is only secure with certain implementations. And so we want to embrace as much cryptography as we can for safety, and then to allow people to spend their currency with whatever key systems are deemed secure at the time. But we're trying to just embrace as much as we can and then only turn on the best candidate. So this brings us to migrations. You can put a public-private key system change into Bitcoin, but everyone's balance becomes 0. If someone remembers the Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash drama, the second chain had a different hash algorithm, but everybody kept their balances. You're allowed to change anything, including the proof of work or whatever signature scheme is used for the miners. You can change all of those things except for the public-private key. If you change that, everyone's balance is gone, because that public-private key is how you prove that is your money. Now, there are proposals to use the recovery phrase instead, and that's what Buterin has suggested um, as the best plan forward for Ethereum. But he's also saying that they should rewind the chain, which would break all the L2s, break all the bridges. I mean, he may be able to get Ethereum and maybe a few others to rewind to the chain, but I don't think he's going to get Bitcoin to rewind their chain. So the problem becomes, you can change anything except that public-private key, and you're looking at a very, very difficult migration if you're trying to upgrade in place. If there's a partial migration, which is the case with Bitcoin, then you're leaving insecurities behind. And this is actually there's been a few upgrades to the way that Bitcoin works. And it used to be not UTXO. It used to be a public key that people would send money to, and you just had a hash of the public key. And the public key didn't change. The UTXO model migration was over 10 years ago, but there's still around 30 to 40% of the coins sitting in the old address system. So when quantum computers come, they'll be able to take that Bitcoin and then be able to sell it. And the same problem comes from any other migration in place. You have to burn everybody who didn't complete the migration by a certain period of time. And that means that there's going to be value lost. You can't have security in an insecure network, because people could just replace the smart contracts, and your funds might be quantum safe, but the multi-sig that was used to sign, a DEX contract, that can't be quantum safe, and so that multi-sig is going to be vulnerable, and then they can replace the libraries. The attacker can then take all of your quantum safe funds because you interacted with a smart contract, and that's not a very good security model. So I'm advocating for a fresh start and a clean chain. Other people will probably end up migrating and trying to convert their cryptography, but my biggest concern is that they might try it too late. So in short, we're building Noah's Ark for Web3. We're building something that will work. People might have been able to get in boats for a flood, but we're building an ark that we know will be safe.
All right. Well, now everyone is sufficiently doom-pilled, and they're feeling like, oh, what's going to happen with all our funds? Is really the only solution to switch to one of these quantum safe chains, or are there like SDKs that could come out that would be like, okay, we're going to, just talk to us. Is it really just new chain or nothing?
If you're on a chain that's in the middle of migration, and there's two that I know of, CKB and Algorand. And Algorand has to they've implemented the cryptography. Both groups have. Neither have implemented it into their wallets, last I checked. And so they're mid-migration, but the number of quantum safe funds I'm pegging around 0%. Now they're going to have to go through basically like, how do we migrate our ecosystem? Should we leave all of the things that aren't migrated around? When do we cut them off? And my concern is, like the same with those old, like Satoshi's old Bitcoins, if you're part of a network that's partially migrated, someone can just start selling in your network. And then the value of Bitcoin goes down because blockchain is essentially a system of trust, and you can trust the math. If you can't trust the math, well, you're trusting the people you're interacting with. Since they're anonymous in blockchain, that makes it very, very difficult. So if you're doing a migration in place, there's a possibility that you'll be attacked while the migration is ongoing. Algorand has they actually have data elements that have managers, and it's a really good design. I love their design, but I don't think it'll be an easy conversion. I think they're going to have to change their immutable data to become mutable. They're going to have to do a lot of really hard choices regarding design. It's not an SDK. It's It's like trying to rebuild a car inside a house, and you can only carry one part at a time, and you're blindfolded. It's really difficult, and any mistake, you might go down the wrong hallway.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. It's not just migrate to a completely new chain or nothing, but it's effectively, it's the only way to be safe, because once the attacks occur, well, it depends on who does it, right? If the attacks come from the NSA, they're just going to go after them, like North Korea and bad actors and people who've been ransoming hospitals. They're not going to target the retirement accounts of Americans. On the other hand, if China is the attacker, and their quantum computers are pretty good, they're possibly far ahead of the United States and possibly equal with the West. We can't quite tell. The experts can't quite tell. They're just going to destroy Bitcoin. And that's their goal. That's their stated goal. Destroy Bitcoin, because they're losing too much of their GDP being sent overseas through Bitcoin. If the attacker is one of the private groups in the middle, it's neither the NSA nor is it China. And it's one of these, 20 companies, 30 companies that are close. They're all within arm's reach in 2026 or 2027. Some of them will grab it, some of them won't. My biggest concern is that they'll do it stealthy, because they'll have this machine, and the people who have these machines are sometimes very, very quiet about what they do. They'll have this machine. It'll be able to break Bitcoin or Ethereum or something else. If they break Bitcoin and steal Satoshi's money, everybody knows. So if they want to get away with it, they should go after smart contracts. They should attack something and then launder the money, withdraw it, deposit it into fiat in a bank, and then just sit there with all of their bank reserves, and then announce when they feel like it, Satoshi's wallet being hacked and his coins being moved. Because that's the only way they're going to get any cash out of the system, because there's not enough cash in the system. If you look at USDC and USDT, Circle and Tether, when you combine their value versus the total amount that's on chain and DeFi and so forth, it's only a little over 8%. If you exclude DeFi, it's about 8%. So there's just not enough cash to go around. The exchanges may simply declare bankruptcy and sail off in their yachts. If you look at ETF, the lawyers are taking all the money. It's not going to be passed out to the people that had money on deposit, or FTX. The people aren't getting refunds. The lawyers are getting the money. They're charging $750 an hour, and they're charging an enormous number of hours per week. Their legal bill exceeds the recovered amount. So it's not just the insecure chains that are the problem. It's the ecosystem. If you are sharing a correlated value with Bitcoin, or an inverse correlated value with Bitcoin, you're probably drawing off the same pool of money. And so I think part of what we need to do, and I'm trying to get the other quantum safe chains to jump with me, is list on exchanges that make a completely new exchange just holding quantum safe assets. Otherwise, everything goes to zero, whether or not it's safe.
Well, I feel like everyone is sufficiently scared. So let's talk about some of the upcoming milestones and developments the community can kind of look forward to, either from Quantum VM or like keeping an eye on this, quantum changes and how they can secure their funds in the future.
So there's a couple other networks, and these are kind of competition, and I'm going to mention them because I like the code that they've done. The QRL has been doing hash-based signatures for over 6 years, I think. And they have a smart contract system possibly coming out next year. There is Algorand and CKB are doing their migrations. There's Albillion, which is a Chinese group. I've looked at their Go code, and it seemed okay. The thing I was looking for most was, do they have quantum safe cryptography? The answer is yes. So I'm trying to get a hold of everybody and see if all the legitimate groups can work together to establish better exchange relationships, and then put the projects that are built on top of our chains onto that exchange as well. So some of the updates are really, really good. I was really happy to see Signal and Apple and Google moving to post-quantum, because that means that people are taking this seriously, and that's a signal that other people use that don't understand technology to also take it seriously. And when they find out Signal's post-quantum right now, oh, well, that does sound serious. That sounds like something, maybe we should do a migration too. How long away is that? 3 to 5 years in most cases, or a break plus 3 to 5 years in other cases. I have a lot of hope for Web3. I want us to be doing a lot of real world systems like supply chain. We have some supply chain groups that are probably going to join us either in testnet or in mainnet. We're hoping to have our testnet September 1st. We're on schedule. We're working on it. It's going to probably be a buggy testnet, because I think if we waited till it was perfect, we waited too long. The real risk isn't necessarily a bug on testnet. The real risk is not having any kind of backup solution at all. Now, in talking about having exchanges with a completely new listing, this is a huge opportunity, not only in a new chain, but in a new economy. There's no way that any competition could possibly unseat Uniswap at this point. But if Uniswap doesn't migrate to quantum safety and somebody else does, they're the new number one. I mean, you could spend $200 million in marketing and probably not even make a dent in Uniswap's market domination. But now we have a chance for new blood and also better opportunities. And I'm hoping to, go away from meme coins and NFTs that don't do anything. And we should be doing systems with, royalties calculations. We should have, copyright strongly attached to the NFT. It should tell you what rights you're getting when you buy an NFT. Is this not just one of how many, but do you have print rights? Do you have reproduction rights? Can you play this in public? Can you use it as part of your YouTube background? There's all sorts of things that licensing needs to mature a little bit on NFTs and the Web3 marketplace in order to adopt stronger business, integrations. We can't have integration with the real world if we're just still stuck in our own fantasy land of, I bought this NFT, it's so great. What are you going to do with it? It's so great. Okay. Do you have the ability to use it as an avatar? Unstated. That means no. So it's kind of funny that people are using NFTs as their avatars, but they don't actually have the right to do so. They purchased a JPEG in its original form, not the ability to modify it, unless that NFT explicitly says otherwise. Another problem is that there's kind of this apocalypse dooming for NFTs, whether or not quantum comes, and that is that there's a lot of domain names. Those NFTs are having their images published off a domain name, not directly through IPFS. Some of them are using IPFS, but it's under their domain name / some path, and then the IPFS address. About 70% of them. So they're going to go away regardless. And I'm working with another team in order to make a migration tool, so we'll be able to migrate the NFTs to our chain. I want all the NFTs to have a better standard that's documenting what the rights are, and we'll be able to do the migration on a user-by-user basis. They'll be able to migrate their assets, and we'll be able to put them into a better environment, I think, one where the rights are documented. Sometimes it'll just have to say unknown if the authors didn't state, but the NFTs themselves should declare what the rights are. I think that's one of the huge opportunities here, is just cleaning up the market a little bit and having better standards for smart contracts and economy and business integrations. I'm also hoping that the big players like JP Morgan, Ernst Young, there's a couple of these really large companies like the world banking system, and they're using blockchain, but they're doing it on a private chain. And we might be able to convince them to use a public chain that has whitelisting and blacklisting in a subnetwork, not an isolated network. So we might actually be able to interact with them and be able to have stocks on blockchain and do other things that you can't currently do. A marriage of DeFi and TradFi, as opposed to we're going to build a new system with no documentation. It's great.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about where listeners can keep in touch with you, keep in touch with all the things that are going on at Quantum VM, and kind of just keep abreast of this quantum issue.
So we have quantumevm.com, and then we're trying to partner with a company, with a website that hasn't been finished yet, and is just targeting quantum safety. We'll link to it as a partner when they come out. And that quantum safety partner is going to cover all chains, not just us. But we're talking about having them include the current status of all chains migrations and what they can possibly do for all chains. So we're hoping that will come out soon, but it really needs to be a community effort. I mean, a few guys just can't document the entire industry and all of the cryptography used by every single chain. Then we have a Telegram group where we're posting quantum news and we're posting QEVM news separately. So if you just want to stay abreast of like what's going on in quantum, how close are we to a possible attack, that's probably going to be a very curated list of news. Right now, I'm conferring with a bunch of quantum physicists, and I ask them questions before I post things. My training is before quantum physics current version, so I have to ask, and I'm reading new textbooks that came out last year in order to catch up on what the current state of quantum is. People ask, how do I learn quantum computing? I'm like, well, that's hard and it's unrelated to blockchain. There's a lot of research questions that are going out. There's going to be three main groups. People who make the hardware, and there's 30 companies plus doing that. People who make the algorithms that run on top of that hardware. And there's about 5 major pieces of software you can use right now. Like Microsoft has Q#, IBM has Qiskit, QISKIT, and then PsiQuantum has their own system. Their estimates are far more accurate than Microsoft's. Microsoft doesn't have any optimizations in their algorithms. And then the third group is going to be mathematicians that convert some problem where we're like trying to fit more containers onto a ship or spend less fuel in shipping, which they had a 70% savings on, by the way. When they use quantum computers to figure out shipping, they saved the Department of Defense 70% of their fuel costs. So it's those people that can take a well-known problem and put it into an algorithm. Those are going to be mathematicians. And that's going to be a huge group to take advantage of this. If you want to be one of those great people, great. If you want to do blockchain, just focus on migration. You don't have to study anything about quantum computers to just know that it's going to be time to move.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for joining the podcast. I'll put the links in the description, and yeah, I encourage everyone to start reading up on quantum computing and how we can protect Web3 if we're the future.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.